Want to know why? Ask how. Howard the Humongous.
Never in a million years did I imagine, when I accepted a job in 2007 to work for Donald Trump, that he would one day run for the presidency, to launch a campaign on a platform of hate and intolerance, and actively win. I regret the day I said yes to Mr. Trump. I regret all the help and support I gave him along the way.
The hearing was like a football match, but dirtier. Democrats were on the offense, hoping that Cohen would spill the beans on the president and provide the evidence for an impeachment. Republicans set up a defensive line, painting Michael Cohen as a pathological liar, a convicted criminal whose every word is false.
Right in front of this committee, you conflicted your testimony, sir. You're a pathological liar. You don't know truth from falsehood.
Sir, I'm sorry. Are you referring to me or the president?
Hey, this is my time.
Are you referring to me, sir, or the president?
Despite the Republican attacks, Cohen was able to say that Donald Trump is...
He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
Hours later, he said, everybody's job at the Trump Organization is to protect Mr. Trump. Every day, most of us knew we were coming in and we were going to lie for him. And Cohen warned the Republican congressman defending Trump that they were doing what he had done for 10 years, covering up for Trump even if that meant lying, even if that meant criminality. But there was more that Cohen managed to say. He revealed that Trump proclaimed over and over again that the 2016 presidential campaign wasn't about politics. It was about elevating the Trump brand so Trump could bring in more cash. Cohen quoted Trump bragging that the presidential campaign was the biggest infomercial in history. Far more despicably, Trump made Cohen intimidate and rip off those who worked for him. Reported Cohen, Mr. Trump directed me to call business owners, many of whom were small businesses that were owed money for their services, and told them no payment or a reduced payment would be coming. When I advised Mr. Trump of my success, he actually reveled in it. How many times did Trump have Cohen verbally abuse those he owed money to? How many times did he have Cohen rip off these little guys, refusing to pay their bills? Over 500 times, guessed Cohen.
How many times did Mr. Trump ask you to threaten an individual or entity on his behalf?
Quite a few times.
50 times?
More.
100 times?
More.
200 times?
More.
500 times?
Probably.
Then there's this Cohen quote. When I say con man, I'm talking about a man who declares himself brilliant, but directed me to threaten his high school, his colleges, and the college board to never release his grades or SAT scores. But something explosive flickered by in a mere 2 minutes of the testimony, and then was forgotten. It had to do with a Russian oligarch who paid $95 million for Donald Trump's mansion in Palm Beach, Florida in 2008. That $95 million was nearly $54 million over the price Trump had paid just 4 years earlier. According to the Cox newspaper chain, it was the highest price paid for any single-family home in the history of the United States up to that point. In other words, in 2008, in the depths of the Great Recession, when you simply could not find a buyer for your house and when your house's prices were plummeting, a Russian oligarch named Dmitry Rybolovlev, a man who had been allowed to make $13 billion in Russia in exchange for doing Vladimir Putin's bidding, was shoving money into the pocket of a very high-profile real estate developer and reality TV star who would later run for president of the United States. 2008 was a crucial year in Donald Trump's life. Trump was in danger of losing everything. Democrat Jackie Speer, one of the congresswomen grilling Cohen, wrote an article about this a few months ago in the San Francisco Chronicle. Speer claims that the recession had seriously depressed sales at the not-yet-complete Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago. In other words, Trump's Chicago foothold was tanking. What's more, writes Speer, Trump was unable to make payments on a bank loan for $640 million. And Trump Entertainment Resorts, which owned the Trump Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City, was also failing. Trump Entertainment was facing a $53 million payment to bondholders. Speer adds that Trump had no apparent source of funds to meet these crises. In other words, Donald Trump was under the gun to make payments for close to $1 billion. But the Russians had been courting Donald Trump since 1987. When, writes Speer, they arranged for Trump and his then wife Ivana to enjoy an all-expense-paid trip to Moscow. The free trip worked. Trump became a megaphone for Moscow's views. Writes Speer, only 7 weeks after his trip, Trump ran full-page ads in the Boston Globe, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, calling for, in effect, the dismantling of the Western Alliance. That dismantling of the Western Alliance would be Vladimir Putin's wet dream, and Trump would eventually deliver it. But we're getting ahead of the story. The Russian feelers to Trump continued. Writes Speer, Trump had another tour of Moscow in 1996. Then in 2013, Trump set his Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was negotiating for a Trump Tower in Moscow, something Michael Cohen testified about repeatedly. In fact, Trump Tower negotiations appear to have begun in the 1970s or 1980s for Moscow, sometime after Trump's first Moscow trip. But here's the canister of nuclear explosives that journalists missed. Jackie Speer claims that way back in 1987, 32 years ago, quote, Trump was already being enrolled in the Russian system of compromat, of which Putin is a master. Grant a favor, ask for nothing. Then ask for crucial favors far down the line. That compromat ratcheted up to a peak in 2008. Why 2008? Remember, that's when Trump was about to go over a cliff financially. The Russians used 3 means to pull Trump out and put him on their payroll. Writes Speer, Rybolovlev's purchase of the Florida mansion put about $74 million in Trump's pocket, enough to fully pay off one of those debts. And according to a handful of investigative journalists, 2 banks also bailed Trump out, Germany's Deutsche Bank and Russia's VTB. Deutsche Bank was later fined for laundering $10 billion for guess who? Vladimir Putin. And VTB was called Putin's piggy bank. In the March 27th Michael Cohen hearing, Russia was supposed to be off limits. That's too bad. The hint that came and went in that day's session may well indicate to Democrats where there could be real grounds for impeachment. But that's not all. There's one other urgent truth that spilled forth from Michael Cohen's testimony. The real star of the Cohen hearing was the lie. Cohen's testimony focused on the president's habit of daily, weekly, and monthly lies, big lies and little lies, lies about pursuing that Trump Tower deal in Russia through almost all of the presidential campaign, while saying over and over again in tweets and to his rallies that there were no Russian deals. Lies denying contact with Roger Stone, despite the fact that, according to Cohen, Cohen was in Trump's office when the Donald put a phone call from Roger Stone on the black speakerphone in the middle of his desk. In that call, Cohen claimed that Stone said he had just talked to WikiLeaks' Julian Assange, and that a major dump of emails would come in days. Emails damning Hillary Clinton. Lies about Trump's personally ordering hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels and to Playboy model Karen McDougal. And there was another disturbing revelation. Among the more than 500 people Cohen was paid to intimidate were people Trump wanted to either shut up or change their stories. Some of these were journalists, but threats to intimidate witnesses is a felony. Most of Trump's lies are old news, and they are not the high crimes and misdemeanors that Democrats are hungering for. But they are evidence of a non-stop trail of Trump dishonesty, and that's the problem. Donald Trump has made lying ordinary in a president's communications with his citizens. He has normalized dishonesty. According to the Washington Post, by February of 2019, Trump had told 8,148 lies since becoming president. With any other president, just one lie could be a scandal that makes headlines. But not with this president. The news that Trump lies is so mundane that it makes the average citizen yawn. Hell, it even makes you and me yawn. And that's the problem. As I said, Trump has made dishonesty normal, but dishonesty should never be normal. Truth sustains a democracy. Lies pollute it. What's more, lying is a desecration of my personal values and of yours. It is a desecration of the White House, the presidency, and the American political system. It is a desecration of this one nation under God with truth and justice for all. Truth. The March 27th Michael Cohen hearing began with a lie. Mark Meadows implied that Cohen and his attorney had turned in their paperwork late the night before the hearing on the advice of John Dean, the Republican who turned on Richard Nixon in the days of Watergate. But Cohen claimed he had never talked to Dean in his entire life, and the odds are that Cohen was telling the truth, not Meadows. Look, once upon a time in America, every child was taught that when George Washington was 6 years old, he had chopped down a cherry tree. When his dad found out about it, the story goes, Washington, knowing he would be punished, told the truth. He was the guilty party. Washington's famous quote was, "Father, I cannot tell a lie." That story first appeared in a biography of Washington published in 1806, and it caught on for over 200 years for a reason. It represented a primary American value, a primary American aspiration. Even more, it was tied to the fact that you could encourage your children to look up to the president as an example of everything you wanted your kids to be. But you don't hear the story of George Washington and the cherry tree anymore. Why? The person wielding the axe against truth is in the White House. And another man who tells lies in nearly every paragraph he utters helped him get there. Vladimir Putin, a dictator hell-bent on tearing America down. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. And now for the sleazy, slimy, seditious. I've got to get some more words with S's in the beginning. I got to get more sibilants. Little off button. I think I found it.